There are artists whose names echo through stadiums long after the lights go dark. And then there are artists whose presence is felt more quietly, not through spectacle, but through emotion that lingers, gentle and unresolved. Christine McVie belonged to the latter. To the world, she was part of one of the most celebrated bands in modern music history, a songwriter whose melodies felt effortless, a voice that carried warmth, longing, and restraint all at once. But behind the timeless songs and sold-out arenas, Christine lived a life shaped by solitude, reflection, and choices that often pulled her away from the very happiness her music gave others. She stood at the center of Fleetwood Mac's emotional gravity, quietly anchoring a band famous for chaos, heartbreak, and excess. While others burned brightly and publicly, Christine moved differently. She observed, she absorbed, she translated feeling into sound. Yet success never seemed to shield her from loneliness. If anything, it amplified it. The applause faded quickly, the hotel rooms stayed silent, and the songs, so full of love, loss, and yearning, often revealed more truth than she ever spoke aloud. This is not the story of fame alone. It is the story of a woman who gave the world beauty while quietly wrestling with her own need for peace. A musician who learned early that brilliance does not guarantee fulfillment, and a voice that continues to whisper long after the final note has faded. Christine Ann Perfect was born far from the roar of crowds on a quiet summer day in 1943 in England's Lake District. It was a place of stillness and open air, a fitting beginning for someone who would later crave silence more than celebration. Music was present early, not as spectacle, but as routine. Her father, a violin teacher, introduced melody into the household as naturally as conversation. The piano became familiar before it became meaningful. Yet her childhood was not defined by warmth alone. Christine grew up sensing an emotional distance that words rarely filled. Her mother, deeply absorbed in spiritual practices and psychic work, often felt more attuned to unseen worlds than to the needs of her daughter. Christine learned early to observe rather than demand, to internalize rather than confront. It was a pattern that would follow her into adulthood. At first, music was simply structure, lessons, discipline, repetition. She studied classical piano seriously, believing that precision mattered more than expression. But everything shifted when she encountered rhythm and blues. The music of artists like Fats Domino opened a door that classical training never had. It was freer, messier, human. Still, Christine did not dream of stardom. She wanted stability, normalcy. For a time, art school seemed like a sensible compromise, a future that felt grounded. But fate, as it often did with her, intervened quietly. One invitation, one rehearsal, one choice that felt small in the moment and irreversible in hindsight. London did not welcome Christine gently when she arrived. It offered no promises, only cramped rooms, temporary jobs, and the quiet doubt that follows anyone chasing something undefined. For a while, music was still not the destination. It was simply a door that kept reopening even when she tried to walk past it. Her first real breakthrough came not with confidence, but with necessity. Joining the blues band Chicken Shack was less a declaration of ambition and more an acceptance of opportunity. Yet once she stepped behind the keyboard, something undeniable surfaced. Her voice, understated, smoky, emotionally restrained, carried a depth that felt lived in, even in her 20s. Audiences noticed. Critics noticed. Awards followed. But Christine remained detached from the idea of being a star. She did not perform to command attention. She performed to release something internal, and that distinction set her apart. Ironically, just as recognition arrived, restlessness followed. Success felt heavy, predictable, and then love entered the frame, quietly, persistently, in the form of John McVie, the reserved bassist of Fleetwood Mac. Their connection grew slowly, away from the spotlight, shaped by shared silences rather than grand gestures. When Christine chose love over momentum, leaving her band at the height of acclaim, it baffled many. But for her, it felt logical. Music had opened the door. Love had pulled her through it. What she could not yet see was how deeply the two would become entangled and how difficult it would be to separate them later. When Christine joined Fleetwood Mac, it did not feel like an arrival. It felt like a continuation, as if she had been moving toward this moment without ever naming it. Her Hammond organ filled the spaces others left open. Her voice softened the sharp edges, and her songwriting brought emotional clarity to a band increasingly defined by personal turmoil. As the group ascended toward global dominance, the relationships within it quietly unraveled. Love affairs ended, new ones began. Old wounds were carried onto the stage night after night, disguised as harmony. Christine stood in the middle of it all, composing songs that sounded gentle but carried extraordinary weight. Her marriage to John McVie did not survive the pressure. Touring blurred boundaries, familiarity turned corrosive. They divorced yet continued to perform together, transforming private pain into public art. Each performance demanded composure. Each song asked her to reopen something she had tried to close. Albums like Rumors brought unimaginable success. Records sold, accolades stacked, history made. But for Christine, triumph felt oddly hollow. She later admitted that the very band she loved had consumed the space where intimacy should have lived. Music became both refuge and restraint. While others unraveled visibly, Christine endured quietly. She became the stabilizing force, the emotional counterweight, the one who stayed calm when everything else threatened to collapse. But even strength, when sustained too long, extracts its own cost. By the late 1990s, the noise had become unbearable. Not just the crowds, but the weight of expectation, repetition, and emotional exposure. Christine made a decision that confused fans and worried colleagues. She stepped away from Fleetwood Mac, not out of bitterness or fatigue, but fear. A sudden and intense anxiety about flying closed the door on touring, and with it, on the life she had known for decades. What followed was not collapse, but quiet. Christine retreated to the English countryside, choosing ordinary routines over extraordinary acclaim. She cooked, she gardened, she walked her dogs. For the first time in years, there were no schedules demanding vulnerability on command, no expectations to turn heartbreak into harmony. To outsiders, it looked like disappearance. To Christine, it felt like survival. She later admitted that she had not honored her own well-being while honoring her gift. Music had given her purpose, but it had also kept her from listening to herself. And yet, even in silence, music lingered. Melodies still surfaced, lyrics still arrived uninvited. She released a solo album, modest and introspective, proof that creativity had not left her, it had simply softened. Christine was learning, perhaps for the first time, that stepping away was not failure, it was preservation. Time did what success never could. It softened the fear, it clarified the regret, and slowly it brought Christine back to the place she had once fled. After years of therapy and reflection, she realized that absence had not healed everything. There was still something unfinished, not with the audience, not with the band, but within herself. When she returned to the stage in 2013, standing once again beside Fleetwood Mac, there was no spectacle of redemption, no grand announcement, just a woman reclaiming the part of herself she had set aside. She later admitted that walking away had been necessary, but staying away for so long had come at its own cost. She had not honored the gift she was given. In her final years, Christine lived quietly, surrounded not by applause, but by familiarity, friends, music, memory. When she passed away in 2022 at the age of 79, the world mourned a legend. But those who knew her remembered something else: her kindness, her steadiness, her ability to bring calm into chaos. Christine McVie did not chase immortality, yet she achieved it anyway. In melodies that feel like conversations, in lyrics that understand restraint, in songs that never demand attention but always earn it. She was the quiet heart of a restless band, and her voice, gentle and unwavering, will continue to